Greetings, valiant Helldivers, and welcome to the Liberty. I'm your host, Vanguard. Let's get straight to business as the enemies of managed democracy never rest. Galactic War Recap. It's day 407 of the Galactic War, and at present, 50,114 Helldivers are deployed in the field. 18,939 Helldivers, 37.79% of our forces, are on the bug front. 27,139 troops, 54.16% of our forces, are on the bot front, and 2,976 Helldivers, 5.94% of our forces, are on the squid front. Just over 56 hours of the current major order remain, and as it stands, the Helldivers have successfully defended against 2 attacks from the automatons. Over 409,252,000 Terminids have been slain, just under a third of the required amount. The SEAF's finest have just over 2 days to mount 6 more successful defenses against the bots, and with time running short, this may very well come down to the wire. As for the bug front, we'll be lucky to meet 2/3 of the quota by the time the major order ends. Unless a significant number of reinforcements join the battle, there is virtually no chance of us collecting enough E710 to activate the Penrose energy siphon. Whatever the case, we need to keep up the fight and stop our enemies dead in their tracks. To date, the Helldivers have completed over 467,491,000 missions. Just under 3.3 billion Helldivers have given their lives in the name of democracy. A little less than 104.5 billion Terminids lie dead. Nearly 42.3 billion automatons have been scrapped, and closing on 19.5 billion Illuminate have been laid to waste. The Galactic War rages on, and as long as tyranny continues to rear its ugly head, we can never relent in our efforts. And now for a review of the Borderline Justice Warbond. Is it worth the super credits? Helldivers. High Command has authorized a full review of the Borderline Justice Warbond, a new set of gear inspired by the lawmen of old. With the promise of high-powered weapons, explosives, and even personal flight, does this Warbond deliver justice on the battlefield? Or is it just a fancy way to get yourself killed in style? Let's break it down. The weapons. Fun to use, but not revolutionary. Let's zoom in on the R6 Deadeye rifle, which is a marksman primary. Now, this weapon hits hard and one-shots medium enemies and even staggers bots. It has high precision and a zoom feature that makes it ideal for headshots. Unfortunately, it takes a long time to reload this weapon, and its awkward ergonomics make it pretty clunky in faster fights. It also has no heavy penetration to speak of, making it all but useless against tanks, hulks, and chargers. Overall, this is great for sharpshooters, but is outclassed by stronger options like the crossbow or eruptor. That said, if used properly, it could be extremely effective in a full squad. However, if it's crowd control you want, this is definitely not the weapon for you. Now on to the LAS-58 Talon, which is an energy sidearm. Like other energy weapons, it has infinite ammo, as long as you avoid overheating, of course. It has a fast rate of fire and decent DPS, which makes it great for sustained engagements. Again though, no heavy penetration, which makes it inferior to the Senator or Ultimatum. It also overheats relatively quickly, so you'll need to be careful with that trigger finger. In short, it's a solid backup weapon, but not a sidearm you'll really get too attached to. And now the TED-63 Dynamite, which is a throwable. We have to admit that this really packs a punch with its massive explosion radius. The adjustable fuse, which you can configure between 5 and 60 seconds, is a really fun and useful addition. This particular throwable is great for those of you who love to experiment and play creatively, especially if you love the idea of setting traps and clearing swarms. Sadly, this particular weapon has relatively low utility, as it cannot destroy bot fabricators or bug holes. It's also not as reliable as gas grenades, thermites, or impact explosives. In conclusion, the TED-63 Dynamite is a lot of fun, but pretty impractical when it comes to serious combat. Of course, if you're a rootin' tootin' cowpoke, then this is the perfect weapon for you. Now let's focus on the armor sets. These are stylish, but kind of limited in some ways. The great thing about the Gunslinger passive is that it boosts the efficacy of sidearms. As mentioned earlier, reload speed is increased by 40%, holster speed by 50%, and recoil is reduced by 70%. If you're a big fan of high DPS sidearms like the Senator or Verdict, then this will pair very well with those. Sadly, as it stands, the recoil reduction is completely bugged and not working correctly. It's also important to remember that sidearms remain secondary weapons, making this more of a roleplay choice than a meta pick. Overall, this is a really cool and potentially useful idea, and one of the most interesting passives we've seen in quite some time. Now let's take a closer look at the B100 Lift 860 Hover Pack, which is potentially the most interesting addition to the Warbond. This particular piece of tech grants Helldivers 4 to 6 seconds of flight time. allowing them to ascend rapidly and employ new strategies against our enemies. It's extremely useful against the bugs as it lets you escape swarms and attack them from above. It also works well in conjunction with weapons like the grenade launcher or crossbow. Sadly, it's a lot harder to aim and shoot accurately when you're airborne. And of course, the automatons love a floating target as it allows them to get a nice clear shot at you. Also, make sure you stick the landing to avoid ragdolling yourself to death. Simply put, the hoverpack is a high-risk, high-reward tool. It's excellent for enhanced mobility, but not ideal for every kind of scenario. And how about that sample extractor booster? Is it actually worth it? The greatest thing about this particular booster is that it causes large enemies to drop samples once they die. Sadly, the drop rate is extremely low, making it less than worthwhile. It's also capped at 10 samples per mission, meaning it's far from reliable when it comes to farming. In truth, unless this booster receives some much needed tweaks, we really don't recommend using it. Now that you have a better idea of how the individual components in the Warbond measure up, let's evaluate the Warbond's efficacy in terms of how useful it is against the enemies of Super Earth. Overall, this particular Warbond is best used against the Terminids. The hoverpack makes escaping swarms a lot easier. There's nothing we love more than floating above a swarm of ravenous bugs and raining down justice upon them. The dynamite is also extremely effective when it comes to large groups of bugs. However, when it comes to the Illuminate, the results are mixed. There's no doubt that the hoverpack is extremely useful for maneuvering through city maps with relative ease. The Deadeye rifle can also one-shot overseers, but struggles when it comes to durability. And against the bots, well, the results are less than desirable. For the most part, using the hoverpack against the clankers is nothing short of a death sentence. And seeing that the weapons lack any kind of heavy penetration, they're all but useless against larger automaton units. So then, is the Borderline Justice Warbond actually worth it? In terms of the fun factor, it's 5 stars for sure. The hoverpack is an absolute blast, no pun intended, and the cowboy theme is definitely great. However, in terms of the meta utility, we give it 2 out of 5. This is because the weapons and gear are outclassed by many better alternatives. Our recommendation is that if you love the theme, you'll definitely want to buy this. However, if you're looking for something really effective, then you may want to look elsewhere. In conclusion, this Warbond isn't a must-have. The weapons are decent, but hardly groundbreaking, the armor is situational at best, and while the hoverpack is definitely fun, it's not a game changer. If you love the cowboy aesthetic or want to experiment with new playstyles, it's definitely worth considering. But if you're looking for top-tier gear to maximize your helldiving efficiency, your super credits are better spent elsewhere. So what do you think, Helldivers? Are you rocking the hoverpack, or are you sticking to tried and tested gear? Sound off in the comments below, troops, for liberty and justice across the frontiers of the galaxy. And now for the Super Earth Art of War, Belief. A Helldiver who does not believe in their mission has already failed. Faith in Super Earth, in your squad, and in yourself is the foundation of victory. Helldivers, defenders of liberty. War is not fought with weapons alone. Our rifles, our stratagems, our orbital bombardments, these are tools and nothing more. The true power of a Helldiver lies within. It is the unyielding belief that what we do is righteous and necessary. That we are the hammer of justice, the fist of democracy, and the only force standing between order and chaos. The coward hesitates, the weak falter, the undisciplined question their purpose. And in that moment of doubt, they are lost. But the Helldiver knows. We know that our cause is just. We know that our brothers and sisters stand beside us. We know that Super Earth is worth fighting for. There will be moments when the enemy swarms around you, when your stratagems are depleted, when the battlefield burns. And in that moment, you must believe. Believe in your training. Believe in your squad. Believe in the mission. For it is belief that separates the hero from the fallen. So Helldivers, stand tall, fight with unwavering conviction, and let the galaxy know we are Super Earth and we will never surrender. For Super Earth and democracy.